We are live from Boston, Massachusetts. Today's date, Friday the 13th, 2025. Any superstitious people out there? No, really, it's June 13th, 2025. To listen to the broadcast, dial +1 518 801 1318. When we are off air, you can listen on this line to past episodes 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Call the studio to ask my guest speakers or myself a question at +1 617 987 8603. And at this time, I would like you all to say a prayer for DJ Chris. He took a terrible fall, and he has had 2 surgeries on his spinal column, right around C5 and C4, I believe. One through his Adam's apple, and the other one from his back. And now he has to learn to walk all over again. So if you have his address, please send him a card. Send him something. Give him a call. Most everybody knows how to get in touch with him. Thank you very much. Tonight, from the Sunshine State, I would like to welcome Evie Everlast. Why don't you say hi, Evie?
Good evening. Hello.
Evie, you have conveyed that you have suffered generational targeting. Could you give our listening audience a feel for what this is like? Relative to this, when did you first learn about it? And you can elaborate on it because I think it goes back 4 generations. Go ahead.
I really didn't put it all together. It's called repressed memory theory, and I didn't really tie it all together until after my mother's passing. But before that, I noticed there was always something that was off. Everything was always a little bit harder. It seemed like every task that you try to do is always a little bit harder. It would take a lot longer. Things weren't handed to you, like everyone thought. Things were made a lot harder for the 4 women. It was my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, and myself. And my great-grandmother was mixed, is what they described it. And she African-American and Caucasian, and she was a teacher in Pedro, Florida, and maybe somewhere in Alachua County, but I'm not sure. She was abused by my great grandfather, and there were some things that happened that she wasn't allowed to get divorced, that kind of thing. And then my grandmother, the same thing. She married the Coca-Cola, one of the Coca-Cola heirs, Dr. Candler, and he was abusive, and she actually hid on top of her roof during a bridge game. She had people coming over for a bridge game, and she hid because he had beat her up so badly. She didn't want him to see her, and he was a doctor, so there's no way she could. They didn't press charges. They didn't even have anything like that, to help. So she just finally got away, but she did get divorced. Then she married my grandfather, and they had my mother and her sister. And then my mother was targeted through her second marriage, and he actually got an attorney, stole my brother and took him out of state, so an established residency. So she was a school teacher, special education, so she had no prior, anything that she was a bad mom, any of that. But they smear campaigned her, and he was able to get my brother, basically, and steal him because he took him out of state, and we couldn't find him somewhere in Louisiana. And so that absolutely, after that, my mom was never the same. She just never came back from it, and she lived a pretty hard life after that. Her whole life was just in one swoop taken, and it was a constant battle, for her, to look at herself, because no one believed that this was going on. And then, of course, I started growing up and I got married. And my first marriage, my father's, the father to my kids, he actually used the same attorney, divorce attorney, that my mother did in the same county. Because, that's why I say generational, because we were all in the same county, somewhat in the same county growing up. And so it was easy to track that. And you can go back in the clerk of the courts and find all the historic information. And that's where it kind of led me to saying the aha moment of, listen, there's something more going on here. This isn't just coincidental. And so there's much more than that, but it would be kind of confusing to the audience. But those are kind of the areas. And then what was the second question? There was two.
When did you first learn of it? When were you told, or did you find out? You
I
know,
don't think I was ever really told that I was targeted until I started doing research on the internet. Because you got to remember, we didn't have all this information. It wasn't available to targets. And so finally, I just started going and doing a lot of research online and found targeted information. I didn't know that that's what we were called, but I just said, well, what is it called when a group of people harasses you while you're at work and says stuff to you that how would they know? There's no way they could know. And it started coming up with gang stalking stories. And it also came up with military, used it to control. It was a control mechanism, to control people. And so that's where I had first learned about it. And then, but that was way back before I was, social media was really, really big deal. It was there, but it wasn't like it is now. And then about 2 years ago, I finally found the calls, and I found some groups online. But the Facebook groups, they get inundated with a lot of spam. And so I even have a page myself. But they just, people come on there saying they'll help you, and people get scammed. And I just don't promote that, because you don't want somebody giving somebody money and promise them they'll get them off the list and just take their money, sort of thing. So I saw a lot of that. So I just steered clear of that and stayed with the calls. And then that's where I kind of was told by my stories that I would, tell on at the time. And people would say, oh, it sounds like you were MK Ultra, or, this or that. And so that's kind of like how I was told.
okay, very good. Evie, do your attacks take a physical form, or are they linked in part to remote neural monitoring? Do you receive any form of voice to skull?
I don't think so. I don't think so. There was an incident one time, but the only problem with that is that my one of my sons was in the car with me, and it was an actual voice to skull. It was actually radio, and they said something, and both me and my son heard it, and they came over the radio and said, "Hey, everybody, how's everybody doing?" And and it wasn't I didn't even have the radio on. My radio wasn't even working, I didn't think, because the kind of car I had, the Honda Pilot, or not Pilot, but the Accords, you have to have a special code when your battery goes out, and you have to get that from a dealership, or your radio won't come back on. So somehow they had some kind of a radio in my car, or they somehow were able to turn on my radio using the code, because that's something that you could probably hack pretty easily. And they put the code in, and so they were coming in through the speakers. But I don't know if that's voice to skull, because that wasn't that. My son was like, "Mom, your radio. How is this person?" He was little. And he was like, "How are they talking through your radio?" I'm like, "I don't know." But and that son is 27 years old. So he was only about 7 when that happened. So that was 20 years ago. So this has been going on.
Okay, they can
But
do that,
yeah,
This is one of
yeah,
the things that they do. They will use devices around you, especially ones that are making noise, and they
okay,
will grab that sound and mix it with their voice and give it back to you. So I would say that that was probably an instance of voice to skull. It's my opinion.
And like the TV programs, like TV, it's like they know when you're watching something. I feel like they are coming in somehow with AI, and maybe the verbiage that's being used is different for us. Maybe a minute or two of dialogue in a movie, somehow they splice it. I don't know. I know it sounds kind of nutty too, but that's the only thing I can think of is that might be close to voice to skull. It's using, like you said, the electronics around you.
Okay, there's something called voice sampling or digitally sampled voice. And what they do is they will sample the voice on the television and they will insert a word of their choice. And sometimes the words aren't too friendly. But
Right. And
that's
they're
true.
targeting you
Right.
specifically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought that was BS until I started hearing it myself.
Yeah. Me too. Because I'm like, how would they do that? But it's really, if they've got the technology they've got, it's really not that, it's really not that hard to go in, to something that's live playing to splice it a little differently.
Well, our studio in the middle 80s, we had a Korg M1. It's actually a keyboard instrument, a very sought after unit. And you could do that. You could digitally sample a voice.
Wow.
And yeah, and you could do that back then. So imagine what they can do
They
today.
can do now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very,
Well, they're
very
cloning.
interesting.
Look at what they're
Yeah,
doing with it. They clone the wolves. Those like kind of like Jurassic Park.
well, I think there is a Jurassic Park between me and you
Oh
and
yeah.
all of the listeners because they have already cloned a small, I think they call it a chicken dinosaur, but it
Yeah.
was actually done with a chicken's egg. And they changed the DNA and they have a small dinosaur. I
Well,
have,
look, well, chickens are small raptors if you look at them without any. You know.
yeah, the raptors are bad news to me.
Yeah.
I don't
Oh
like
yeah.
those.
They
Th-
don't. And a T Rex, please don't bring back stuff like that. You know.
yeah, and they're starting to say that the T Rex moved a lot more quickly than they thought in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I'm
let's
sure.
get back to targeting. Okay, now you have mentioned that your targeting started when you were a small child. Can you explain your memories of those years?
It was kind of shocks. There was lots of shocks. Um, so I was. I know maybe they could have gotten to me somehow, maybe to monitor me, because I grew up in a, and usually this stuff, it takes place at universities, because that's where they do a lot of the studies and they get the grant funding, and they can do all that, and medical schools and stuff, and whatever. And I had was at a playground, and some boys were playing with a 2x4 and kicking it back and forth or stomping on it or whatever, and it went flying in the air, hit me in the head, and I had to go be rushed to the emergency room where I got stitches. And so in those instances, I think maybe somehow they were able to put something, maybe to like some kind of a way to monitor where I went. Maybe not hear my thoughts or things like that, but or try to control that, but just like a GPS, maybe a uh, you know you know kind of a not advanced maybe or something like that. But I've had, I grew up in a town where, that is what they did. They did a lot of studies. They did animal studies. They did human studies. They do, you know, human experience studies all the time. They're just doing that kind of stuff all over the place where I grew up. So it's not far fetched to have watched me my entire life or my family. My mother was a teacher. She was a graduate from, that university that I grew up around. So I think looking back, there's lots of ways that they could have, done something that I wouldn't have realized. Like because when you're little, that's probably the best time to target a person because they're getting hurt. So they're going to the ER because they did this or they did that, so they can slip something in there to monitor, a subset of group that they want to. I also had RH. I found out I had RH negative blood, um, and it's negative. It was the rarest kind, and so I found that out when you go to have children. Women have to have a shot of Rogam, or your body will attack it. The immune system. My immune system has always been kind of crazy. I have rheumatoid arthritis, so very reactive. I don't know if that's something that was done to me, or or if it's just something that the luck of the draw with genetics. Maybe a little bit of both. Um,
Could be. When you were growing up, you were with your mom and dad, and I'm sure they fed you well, and you probably had a lot of oranges and vitamin C, and I'm just assuming that your immune system was in good shape.
yeah,
That's an
when I was
assumption.
growing up, yes. Um, After probably age 20, in my 20s and 30s is when I started getting sick. But I wasn't sick as a child. I wasn't a sickly child. I didn't have any problems that I know of, that I can remember. I didn't have anything that I was having to take medicine for. Anything. I didn't have juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which would be horrible. That's not something you would want anyway. But so I was healthy until my late 20s and early 30s, mid 20s. I started getting sick, and then I've been kind of sick off and on since. Excruciating pain, which it just comes out of nowhere. Bone and joint damage, organ tissue damage. I have leukemia, large granular leukemia, and I have something wrong with my stomach lining, some gastritis, something like that. But I guess when you have one immune disease, they say that you'll accumulate more through time. So,
Oh,
yeah,
all right. Did
it's
you you're drinking bottled water now? I assume.
yes, I do.
Okay, that's good because it was my experience when I was in Florida that any kind of water that came from a well you didn't want to trust because the orange groves they use DDT and that settles into the soil. So a lot of
Yeah,
people got sick from that.
yeah, yeah. Well, the runoff from the cows too, from the into the springs. It's actually
Yes,
the
exactly.
flora has made the watercolor different. Not that blue anymore, like you would think is like you're supposed to see in a spring. It's more of a green algae because the runoff from all the cattle and what they use, I guess, on the farms. And not just what they use on the farm, but the cow waste is being, it's dumping into the rivers now because it's too close. And then the water plants like Zephyr Hills and Dasani, they're taking millions of gallons a day from naturally occurring springs, which you don't want to do because that probably it takes a while to recoup from that, and they never get to recoup because they're constantly taking the water.
I see. I see. Now you, Evie, you were born and raised in Florida. Have you moved elsewhere to escape your targeting or try to?
Not, I have thought about it, yes, many times, but from the experience I've had and through listening to others, it's kind of worse to run because they're just going to follow you, and then you're somewhere you don't know, you're not comfortable, you don't know your way around, you don't know and you're by yourself. There's not that not that you have family, but you can still remember, you have memories of the places that you're at, so you can hold on to the memory of the people. But if you're in a completely new area, there's no good triggering too, you know what I mean? There is good triggering, and so it's not there. And so if you go and move, I would think it would make it even worse.
It
So
could because you don't have the normal people that you see every day that may give you support. There,
Right.
there are many there that will just say hi to you, and that sometimes that'll make your whole day.
Right. Yes. Just somebody to say night, But they say if they help you, you can't help a targeted person or you become a target.
Studio
That's
One,
what I've always heard.
wireless caller.
Okay, we have a call.
Ooh.
Go ahead, wireless caller. Go
Oh,
ahead.
is that me? I just tuned in.
Yeah,
Hey, Frank,
hi.
this
How
is
you
Steve.
doing?
Steve Hammond. I'm doing good. I'm just moving a lot of stuff around my house, and just wanted to give you a virtual hug and thank you for being there. I guess I'll relax a little longer and listen to your show. You have a guest on now?
Ah, yes. Evie Everlast from Florida.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be quiet. Go ahead and do your thing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, bud.
Bye. Okay, that was a gentleman from down south as well. He was just
Oh,
stopping in to say hello. Are there any persons, we'll say, persons of interest that might live close to your residence that may be responsible for some of your targeting?
yes, I think there are. I think the neighborhoods that I live in, I definitely think that it was designed and set up to target and to watch what you do. I think there's more than just myself that's being targeted. I think they kind of, once they get enough targets in an area, or they know of enough targets in an area, they put the people there, and that's their full time job is to watch. You have 10 targets in the northeast quadrant of this side of town. So you got these people to watch these 10. And then on this side of town, you've got 10. So we're going to assign that they have to have it organized that in that way because they wouldn't have enough money to just be using these people just to watch me. There's got to be other targets that we aren't aware of that are around us because there's no way they would fund. I mean, how much are we worth? What somebody was saying that we're worth 5 million a piece. The money they spend on us to target us.
Well,
So something like that.
I believe that Dr. Catherine Horton from the UK originally, she said that we are worth, just to put a round number on it, $100,000 per day
Whew.
in a lawsuit. So
Mm,
add that up. It would break just about any country in the world.
right.
So, yeah, it's there's a big number there.
Yeah. So they've got to be using their staff to harass more than just us. I mean, just me in my area. There's got to be other targets
I'm
that
sure,
we just
and
don't. You know.
there are many targets that are actually in Florida. There is a woman. Her first name is Donna. I cannot reveal her last name. She has been a target for quite a few years, and she's a very wonderful person. I think she's from the Jacksonville area. You have had problems, we'll say, most of your life. And what I'm trying to say is, did it seem throughout your whole life that everyone deserted you, like possibly when you needed them most?
Yeah, I would say so. I didn't recognize it in that way because your family, some of your family is still around. Your grandparents, and the more the family that you had, it seems like they you don't really start realizing it until you start losing. I've been abandoned quite a few times, and I just learned to tune it out. I would learn to say, this is not my life, or it's not going to be my life. It's going to be different one day. And I just said that to myself every day so that I could get to the next one.
Very good. That's a
Because
good
if I actually,
attitude.
yeah,
One,
because if I really took a look at how many times that, somebody wasn't there for me, I don't think that I would be able to fathom that. I wouldn't want to process I wouldn't want to process that. So I can just trick myself, I guess in a way. Um, And then I also have to realize that there have been people there for me too, and those people, maybe they aren't now, but in times during my life there have been. I
Okay,
just focus
that's
on that.
you just stole one of my questions. I was going to ask you, from family members, friends, or law enforcement. Sometimes you get support from law enforcement, sometimes you don't. But I was
Mhm.
just curious where your support came from, because as you start to get older, you realize that you're losing, as you just said a moment ago, you're losing people, and your nucleus of support is actually getting smaller.
Right.
So, do you have friends in the area? I'm sure, in whatever.
No, I do not.
Okay,
I do
family
not.
members.
I do not have any friends.
Okay,
I
how
do
about
not
how about
have any
family members?
friends who will talk to me. My aunt, I just went to Tampa to
Okay,
visit, try to visit their sister and her children. And I went to my cousin's house. Her husband answered the door. He stepped outside, didn't invite us in, and which is fine. We weren't expected, so I wasn't expecting it. But Julie was not there. And so we just sat there and we're talking. My husband and I were just talking to him for a moment. And she pulled in to her own driveway. Um, did not know who it was because she hasn't seen me in a little while. And I plus I had a hat and glasses on and stuff. And she pulls in the driveway. She sees us, squeals out, gives me a dirty look, and just drives really fast down her road. And we looked at her husband and we're like, what's up? Why would she? Have I done something? Is there something I've done? Is there something I can do to make it right? What if he's like, she doesn't tell me. I don't know. So she hasn't told you anything? Nope, she's never told me anything. I don't know. She does that a lot. Very weird, very vague. So then I was like, well, do you happen to know where my aunt lives? And he's like, yeah, she lives in here. So we are like, okay, well, we're sorry that this is going on. You hope you're having a good day. Hope the rest of your day is good. Blah, blah, blah. Go to my aunt's house. We walk around a bit, trying to find, because we don't know what apartment she's in. And we see her. She's out in her yard watering. And we didn't want to scare her. So we said, well, we better not walk around this way. So let's go around the front way and take the sidewalk and then, go the right way. Because, we didn't know if we were supposed to be on the property, that kind of thing. And we
I
didn't want to
see.
get
Yeah,
in trouble. And so she comes around the corner to turn off her hose water or to get her hose. And I said, hey, 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 Aunt so-and-so, it's baby Evie, because that's what they called me when we're growing up. And she looked at me and she goes, I hate you. I don't
why?
want to see you. Yes, that's the first thing she said to me. I hate you. I never want to see you again. I don't want to see you. Can't you let me die in peace? Get out of here. Get.
Wow.
I drove 3 to 4 hours to get there.
Okay, Evie, we have to go to commercial.
All
It's
right.
the content is great. It's very short, and I'd like to say thanks to Tranquility. And this is her advertisement.
Chris, I've been hosting events for targeted individuals, but no one ever comes.
You need TIevents.org. It's where TIs find all the events, conference calls, meetups, webinars.
How do I get listed?
Just go to TIevents.org. It's easy. TIevents.org, where the TI community connects. List your event today.
Okay, and very shortly we will have a lot more commercials. So, to Republic Broadcasting, where I worked, they had like 10 to 15 minutes worth of commercials. It's very boring.
Oh, yeah. Yes. But pays the rent, I guess.
Yep, I guess. Okay, let me see where we can go from here. You were Baker acted. Can you give us a reason why someone would do that?
Well, I kind of can't blame, you can't really blame this. You can't blame any one person because people's perceptions are so different. In the hospital, they've everyone's been through something different, so their perspective or perception of something is totally different than the next. I had just lost my mom. We witnessed her passing away in our home, and so I absolutely went nuts, wanted to sell, didn't want to be, it just wanted to leave. And my poor husband, he was just didn't know what to do. My son witnessed it, my youngest, and he was distraught, didn't know how to process it. And so we shouldn't have moved, but we did. And we're here, we're where we're at. But while we were there, I was getting the house ready. I had 4 dogs at the time. Now we have 2, but I had 4 dogs that had to get out of the house and had to clean the house before someone would come to show, to see the house. And so I always looked kind of a little stressed and probably not very clean because I was always cleaning. And so I was always kind of my hair up, not looking very good, but, not doing anything wrong, just didn't look very good because I was taking care of 4 dogs and a house, trying to get it cleaned up for every time someone would come to take a look to buy. And my son was at school and hurt himself playing hopscotch and fractured his foot. And he told me about it when I picked him up. I was like, well, let's just watch it. We'll see if it's all right, because you don't know, you get a kid, I fall, I've done it. I don't go to the hospital, and so we waited. And then it got to be around maybe 9-10 o'clock at night, and he comes out of his room, and he's kind of small, he's 11, and he's like, Mom, my foot is really hurting me. And when I looked down, it scared me because of how big it had gotten. It scared me. I was like, panicked, being kind of a helicopter mom. Got him in the car and went to pediatrics hospital. And while we were there, they were asking me, are you okay? And this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I told him about my mom. I told him about, I had hurt my ankle too. And that we were both in there. And it was my way of communicating with my son, because he liked to, he would be more reciprocal of treatment if mom was going to do it, right? If he sees mom being tough, he's going to be tough. So I had an injury on my foot that I hadn't gotten taken care of. And I said, well, you know what? Mom's going to go over, she's going to get, when she gets done here, I'll go get my foot checked, that kind of thing. And so they asked me, I guess because I looked so bad, and I was sick. I did have some stuff going on that I didn't realize when they took some blood work. So I did need to be seen. And I told them that. I said, yes, I need to be here. That's fine. And they said, do you want to harm yourself or someone else? I said, no. I said, I did feel that way when my mom died. I felt like I didn't want to be here anymore. I said, but I don't feel that right now. Well, they put in my records that I was going to hurt my son.
Oh, God.
Or that they thought that I could hurt my son. Maybe because I drove him there and they thought the condition I was in, I shouldn't have been. That's the only thing I can think of, because I know that taking your son in to get his foot checked because he hurt himself playing hopscotch is not being a bad mother. However, the only thing I can think of is that their perspective or perception is that, well, they're just kind of being stale in their writing and not realizing how much damage or effect that could have the next person who reads that, right?
Exactly.
In your care. And so that's what happened. I think it was a mistake. And hospitals are allowed to do that. And you have to get over it, and I have to get over it. Because I was very angry for a long time because it was embarrassing. Number one, it hurt my child. First and foremost, he got taken from his mom, and I don't know who he was with. So that really, they would have been better scratching a wildcat's butt than doing that to me, because I went ballistic after that, So I told them all, listen here, and it was. But now that you look back on things, you realize, yeah, you needed to be there. Yeah, they could have been a little nicer with the way they said things and the way they wrote things, but they didn't. And they're not going to. I can fuss about it all day, but it's not, what's it going to do? So I just have to look at it like an adult and realize that's not a part of my life anymore. And that's all you can do.
Very good. Once again, you come up with a positive attitude. You have all the right attributes to come through this with flying colors.
Yeah, I hope so.
You have, Evie shared that you have in the past, it was probably distant past, I'm not sure, you were diagnosed with PTSD. Was there an
Yes.
immediate cause for this? Or was it the result of the continual harassment?
It was, I was diagnosed by my work, the work psychiatrist, a doctor. He was absolutely fantastic. Um, should be world renowned. He was very good at what he did. He's the first one who told me, diagnosed me with it because he was helping me get through some work stuff with that doctor that I told you about that harassed me while he was drinking on the job.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so I was talking to him, but he wanted to talk about other stuff, not just that, of course, And so he would ask, ask about my childhood and things like that. And I told him a lot of different things that had happened through the course of our meetings. And he said, "Well, my dear, you do have PTSD. You have all the." So that's why I got diagnosed, and it was one of the reasons why I got approved for disability retirement, was because of that doctor and what his perception was of what I told him. So I'm very grateful to him for that, because he is willing to help me, and he helped me out a lot. And the veterans, if there weren't veterans, I wouldn't have been able to retire from the VA. So, when they say freedom isn't free, they really mean it.
Okay. You've contracted with a dealership to have your oil changed. The ending result was no oil in the car. Now, this was costing thousands of dollars in repairs, and subsequently the replacement of this vehicle with another. Do you have any details on that?
Yes, I have. I still have the car, and I had taken it for an oil change. I didn't like the place. Something told me not to go, but I went. And they did it kind of fast, and I knew something was up when I left, but I just they put just enough oil in there, but they didn't put something. Or they did something to make the oil leak out. I don't know, but there was, when we got it checked out, we had to pay to get it checked out. It was like $500 for them to tell us they couldn't fix it, or it would be this much if they did, $4,000 for a rebuilt, whatever the heck that it needed. I just figured, well, let me just get a new car, and then when my youngest gets, he gets his license, we'll fix this other car for him. I know that what we've done to this car, so I know what's wrong with it. We'll keep it. But I couldn't see putting that kind of money into it, and it just didn't make sense. So I got another car, and then while I was getting that, it took me 2 weeks to get a car loan, which that's unheard of. Usually you get it in the same day. It took me 2 weeks to get, like I was saying earlier in the conversation, everything in my life has always been a hassle. I can't just go to the grocery store and get an apple, because it will take me 2 hours, because somebody will get in front of me, or the line, 50 people will come in and you have to wait in line. I mean, that's just the way that it is. If I have to call about something, I will be hung up on 2 times on purpose, and I have to call in and get the wait queue again, or they'll transfer me 5 times and they'll say the same thing. The next person will say the same thing. It's just always been that way. And so I got this car finally, and I went to the grocery store, and my son decided to stay in the car. He didn't want to go, and I was just running in quick, and he said a guy pulled up and was opening and shutting his car door, and it was hitting my new car. And I called the police. They didn't come. They didn't show up. So I was like, I'm just going home. And went home. I got called from the police, or the sheriffs, and they said, "Can you come back up here, because we're here now?" And we finally, and I had gotten my son knew the license plate. He took a picture of it, of the person that was doing that. So the police called that guy back up there and told him, "You better get back up here." And so he did. And when he was running our licenses, he's discovered that my license was suspended. Well, there's no way my license could have got suspended, because the only way you can get a car off the lot is if you show proof of insurance. Well, and I paid it 6 days before it was even due. And so I was upset with my insurance company, and my insurance company said, "No, man, look, we've got proof that we paid this. What you paid us, we paid it. Here it is. I had proof." that it was paid 6 days, and for whatever reason, the state of Florida decided they were going to suspend my license. I had to go down, got a towing charge of $72 because the cop said, well, I could take your license, but I know you're going to go tomorrow and you're going to need it, so I'm not going to take your license tonight. So he threatened that. And then I had to get, because I wasn't going to get another ticket for driving on a suspended license and not listening to the officer. So I had to fork out $72 to get it towed and to get a ride home. Then I had to go and get my license done at the DMV, renewed, and then I could drive. Well, then I go driving, and about a week later, I hear these scraping noises coming from the back of my car. I'm like, what is that sound? I had no brakes. No back brakes.
You're kidding.
The guy sold it to me. No back brakes. Now the car is smoking. If you can't put bad gas in it, you have to put good gas. Now that's not targeting. That's just the way the car was made. But but I have to. So now it's smoking. There's something else wrong with the new car. So anytime I go to take it in, they're doing something to make another problem appear. They want you controlled. They don't want you to be able to drive. During that time, I also tried to get another car. They had me come up. I put money down on it and everything. And they said, okay, it'll be ready. I want to do this for you. I want to get this done. And multiple times we'd come back to this other dealership and he'd say, oh, but we have something else we need to do. And then the next time, or the last time I let him do it, I said, listen, I said, if you don't want to sell me the car, that's fine. But I need a car. And I don't know why you're doing this to me, but I need all the money back that I put down on the car, and I want it now. So they refunded all my money. I couldn't, it's like 3 weeks of this, 3 or 4 weeks of them keeping on telling me, oh no, we got to do this to the car. Oh no. Then why do you have it on the lot for sale if it's not ready to be sold?
Exactly.
So,
they didn't
stuff
put
like that.
They didn't check that car out. It probably just came in a couple days before, and they cleaned it up and put it out front. Yeah. That's not good business.
Yep.
All right, you've been hired. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, I was just going to say it was just an ordeal with the car. It was just such a ridiculous ordeal.
Hassle, yeah. Now, just to move on, you've been hired many times with a more than, well, I think you have like a 44 caliber resume, and still your efforts were unnoticed, and you were forced to seek another interview and yet another job, and not really knowing the outcome. Is this still what's going on, or have you moved on from this?
Well, I've had good jobs, but I have to, because of my retirement, I can't make a certain amount of money. I can only make a certain amount of money. And I wouldn't care so much about the money. I don't care about that. It's the insurance. Because of all my illnesses, I can't, if I was to go without insurance and my medicine, then, I probably wouldn't last too much longer. And that may be what they want, but, I want to be around as long as I can for my children. At least they're, hopefully that's what they want too. And so I found that they really like me at the interviews. I do really well on testing. And it seems like a good fit. I mean, really, they honestly, truly seem like they like me, and it makes me feel good, because it's like for so long, you have people telling you they don't. Just like I said, my aunt, she physically looked in my face and said, I hate you, get out of here. That's pretty hurtful. And when it's a stranger, maybe it's a little different because you don't have feelings, but you still have feelings. So I'll get an interview and I'll do really well, and they'll say, oh, we hired somebody else, or they'll hire you and then they say, oh, well, the job is rescinded from budgeting constraints, and things like that, which I can believe. Some of the government jobs, I do believe that, because there was a lot of rigmarole going on in the government, because they were really falsifying how many jobs there were available, so that it made it look like, the current president at the time was producing jobs, but it was really just inflating the market. So
Right.
Some of that could be some of that.
Yeah, some of
But
the people just gave up,
yeah,
and they didn't
yeah,
count those people.
right.
Now,
So
along those lines, you have claimed that you're the victim of smear campaigns,
yes,
and these are
definitely.
related as well to job inquiries.
Right, that's what I was
Um,
gonna get at, yeah, because now I can't even now it's even so before I would get the job, but I would get so targeted that I'd have to leave, so I'd get the job, they'd get me in there, and then I'd just be like, "Listen, I can't come in, I just can't do this, I'm gonna pass out," or I'm gonna do something I get in trouble for, and so now I'll get a good interview, and they'll make me think I have the job, then I don't get it, so now I'm not getting it, now I'm not even getting interviews. Before I was getting the job, it goes in, it went from getting the job so they could target me, almost getting the job and making me feel like I got the job and then letting me down. Now I can't even get an interview for a job. So
oh,
that's
that's
how far.
terrible. So you're poisoned in the area. If you went, like, say, a state away, would that follow you, or is it just people that
Oh
know you?
yeah. Oh, I'm sure
Okay.
it would.
Boy, that's something. This happens to so many people, though. This targeting is like a brand.
Yeah.
It really is. Now,
That's a good way to describe it.
you received 2 black eyes, broken teeth, and a broken nose. Now, to me, this is totally intolerable. Who is responsible for these violent crimes against you?
Husband and ex-boyfriend.
Okay, okay, okay. All right, wow. And you also mentioned that you were getting attacks to your buttocks. This also alludes to the crime of electronic attacks, which are related to remote neural monitoring, which is a very dangerous aspect of targeting. Can you explain that?
I um I was in my kitchen and I was at the stove, and it was probably between 6 and 7 at night, and I have an attic in my house, and I've heard like noises and stuff before from up there, but you have to get a ladder to get up in there. I just don't go up there, But when you do leave the house, people could maybe have gotten up there and set up something, some sort of a weapon. I'm not sure if it's what they call a dew weapon or a laser or what it was, but if at first when I was sitting there doing dishes or whatever I was doing at the stove, I felt this real sting, like feeling. It was really, really painful, and almost like I just grabbed it, turned around, and I was like swatting. I thought something was biting me, but there was no animal. My doors weren't open. There was no, not animal, but no insect that was attacking me. I had pants on, so and there was no bug in the pants, nothing like that, and no stinger. And I thought maybe that it was shingles, and I took a picture as best I could. And when I looked at it, it did not look. I've had shingles, so I know that it wasn't. And it looked like a burn hole somehow into my buttocks. And I don't know. The only thing I can think of is I looked up, and there is air conditioning vents. And the only thing I can think of is someone had somehow remote monitoring. They used some sort of a device with a remote to turn it off and on by satellite, however, or the neighbors, how they live in the same neighborhood as you. That's how they can control the situation. They know where you're going, that sort of thing. They could have set up some sort of device to do that. Um, that's the only thing I can think of, because how else? Why would that happen?
Yeah,
And you can't go tell
exactly.
your doctor that. They'll put you in the loony bin. You
They
know.
can. Okay, this is what they can do. They can make you feel extremely hot to the point where you feel like you're 1,000 degrees.
I
And
get that now. I do feel that. I thought that because I was going through the getting older, and
yeah,
so women go through that. But I'm past that now, and I'm getting that. My face will get really, really, really hot. I'll get super, super hot. Now it is Florida, so I mean,
Yeah, that is Florida. But you're used to going from an air-conditioned house to an air-conditioned car to an air-conditioned place of business and so on. But this is a localized burning pain that would fall under the class of probably an electronic attack. Most definitely,
Right.
I would say.
And my face gets red.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
my chest and my face gets red. And
Do-
it's usually it's odd. And I live next to a tower, a big tower. I don't know what it is, but I hear people on the show saying that if you live near one of those, that's not a good sign.
yeah, it isn't. It isn't really. If for nothing else, the fact that it is now 5G.
Right.
Okay, let me see. Now, to me, this appears to be a classic case of gang stalking with an entry into the world of electronic targeting. And I pray that this is not the conclusion in reality for you. I hope that this is just a small portion of the targeting.
I've been poisoned too. Part of the
Really?
targeting. I've been food poisoned. I also was during COVID. I even have the serial number. I took a picture of it, and I put it on Facebook in a folder because that's the only way I can save stuff that doesn't get destroyed. With a lot number of the medicine that I was on for rheumatoid arthritis, and it actually mimicked COVID. And the shot had an odd warning label on it. It was orange, and it said "die" on it, like DIE. And
Well, that's
I
great.
thought,
I mean, you that's the shot you
I was like,
want.
well, maybe I should have taken that.
Yeah,
But it was like a word in a word, if you get my drift.
yeah, exactly.
You know how you can see words in words?
Yeah,
And so it said die in the word. And my instinct said, Evie, don't take, I won't be taking that. But you have rheumatoid arthritis and it's the middle of a pandemic. You can't go to the hospital. You can't go to your doctor. Either, you're going to take that medicine or you're going to be in so much pain that New York is going to hear, it's going to hear you.
exactly.
So it's very painful. And so I took the medicine. I ended up going and could not breathe, mimicked COVID. I had that real heavy breathing, couldn't catch it. I can't explain it, but when they say you can't breathe, you can't breathe.
Anaphylaxis? Was it an allergic reaction?
I had been taking it. It was the same medicine I'd been taking.
Okay, all right, that rules
It
that
wasn't
out.
it wasn't something new I was trying. The only thing I can think of is it was coming from China.
Okay,
And China from the Wuhan lab, maybe they were just doing stuff to preemptively strike the U.S. In different ways
that could
to
be.
gain control. So that's targeting, though. Either way you look at it, it's how they control their population.
It certainly is. And the medication, some of it that comes from China, is
Yeah.
not exactly what it says on the label. I mean, there are lower doses of certain drugs, and I wouldn't say that the FDA should even let it in the country anymore. And I don't believe it's going to be.
Right.
I wanted to ask you, Evie, do you have any closing thoughts for this evening?
I would say always ask God for help and always give him thanks at the end of the day, no matter how good or bad the day was. And when you're in a situation and you just don't see a way out, look up and just ask for help. You just say, God, please, whatever this outcome is meant, whatever walk you want me to take, just please, please help me in this moment right now. But I accept whatever you have, whatever you have to put in front of me.
That's beautiful, Evie. Okay, I'd like to thank our listeners. I'd like to thank our supporters. And I'd like to thank you, Evie, so very much for being here with us this evening. And I would like to say good night from Boston, Massachusetts. My name is Frank Allen.
Thank you for having me.